Okay. When we left off, you were just at season 2 of Wings. But around that time, you did some work for The Critic, the animated series.
Yeah, so it was, I believe it was between my my second and third year. I was at Wings for 4 years total, but in the middle of that, I had been sent a script somehow by for the pilot of The Critic, which was a new animated show from some of the guys who were involved with The Simpsons, Al Jean and Mike Reiss, and starring John Lovitz. And I read the script, and I thought it was the funniest script I'd ever read. I just died for this script. So they said, do you want to write a freelance episode? Because they didn't have a staff, but we need people to write freelance. So at that point, absolutely. So I went in and pitched the story to them. They liked it. I wrote it. And they said, listen, we're staffing up. We'd like you to join the staff. And I'd done 2 years on Wings. And I'm not proud of this. I wanted to go do it. I just loved I loved it. I loved that pilot so much. And I thought the experience of writing this animated show where you weren't limited by anything was incredible. I think I tried to go do it. I tried to get out. And this is bad. I mean, this was not like good behavior. Basically, the guys said no. The guys at Wings said no. And they had every right to say no. You know, we've invested some time in you. You've got to live out your contract. And I was unhappy about a couple little things deal-wise, but anyway, it didn't work out, and thank God. The first one of those times in my life, and I've had a few of these where I tried to screw up my career, because that show, the Critic, when I ended up seeing it put together, I ended up writing 2 episodes for them, and when I ended up seeing it put together, something about it just wasn't quite as funny on screen as it was on the page. And because they didn't have a big order, the people who were on staff only got to do about 7 episodes over the course of a year, and you're getting paid by the episode as opposed to 22 episodes. It would have been a disaster for me career-wise. I mean, maybe it would have led to something else, who knows? But it wasn't. Listen, there were many things that were funny about it. I'm not ashamed of it by any means, but it wasn't what I was hoping it would be. And it was just bad form. I was young, and I was very, I just was, I liked it. I was driven by the material. I wasn't driven by, I wanted to go make more money or anything. It's probably going to be less money, but that was driving it. And that was just wrong, and I regret that. But my position at Wings was rising, especially because Casey Angel Lee were starting to get involved in this other little side project that they were working on, this little nothing thing over there that, of course, turned out to be Frasier. So as they got pulled away from Wings, and Dave Hackle became the showrunner, I started rising through the ranks of that show and having more responsibility. And I was at the time writing more episodes. I was like a machine. I just wrote. I wrote more episodes at one point. I had written more than anybody. I was the guy when we're in trouble. It's Friday. We need a script Monday morning. I'll do it. I'll write it over the weekend. I was that guy. I could write them fast, and they tended to be pretty good, towards the mark, and we will, get it there and all that. And and I was learning, and I listen, I'm a type A. I am not a person who's comfortable in a passenger seat, so I liked that position. I liked, as I was rising through the ranks, I was comfortable. That's what I like to do. So I did my 3rd year there. No. During my 3rd year, I'm getting it all screwed up. I think trying to remember if it's my 3rd or 4th year on Wings. I think it would be my 4th year on Wings. Oh, I wanted to leave after the 3rd year. I was just getting a little burnt out. I think I had written so many of those scripts, I was getting a little burnt out. And I could have left. My contract was up. And they said, we really want you to stay on Wings for one more year. I said, I'd like to come with you to Frasier. And they said, look, Chris Lloyd had left for Frasier. You know, they had already have sort of their team in place. They wanted people to stay back and mind their other asset.
Was Frasier already on the air at that point?
Oh man, it must have been. I think I wrote for, yeah, I think so. I think I wrote, or it was coming on the air. Wait, oh, darn it, 4th year? No, it was on the air. It was on the air. I want to come to Frasier. And they said, well, tell you what, we'll let you write a couple Frasier scripts because you want to. I go. It's just creative. I want to do something else. I want to write a different show. I want to grow. We'll let you write a couple Frasiers, but stay on Wings, and we'll pay you more, and we'll do this. Just stay for one more year, and you can do it. So I wrote a couple of episodes of Frasier while working on Wings, and those episodes went very well. I was involved in the pitching of some of the stories. Some of it was, of course, room, generated when I'd go in there. But anyway, they liked those scripts. And so now it's the end of that season, and I can do whatever I want. I'm free to do whatever I want. And 2 things happened that were very weird. So they offered me a position on Frasier. And at the same time, I got offered an overall deal at Burlstein Gray, which would have put me on Larry Sanders. And this was a very weird thing, for a guy who's been in this business for 4 years at this point. Those were arguably the 2 best shows on television at the time. Frasier was winning everything, and Larry Sanders was, critically a masterpiece. I remember, so the Frasier guys couldn't believe I wasn't jumping at that opportunity, and so were the Larry Sanders guys. And I was kind of paralyzed with that decision. And I remember one night a couple friends came over who worked in different businesses, and I said, I'm sorry guys, I'm kind of freaking out about this. I have this big decision to make, and I don't know what to do. And one of the guys just said, well, don't I feel sorry for you? Like, it really was like, shut the fuck up. You are, keep those kind of words to yourself. Anyway, I decided on Larry Sanders because, and I remember thinking, this was my rationale. I'd already written Frasier, a couple of episodes. I had already worked under the tutelage of Casey Angel Lee. Amazing respect for them. But if I wanted to grow as a writer, this was a very different form. And I think I could grow more by going into something that I am less comfortable doing. So that was a tough call to have to make, to let them know that. And they were not thrilled with me, but it was okay. I started, what was supposed to happen was Paul Sims was running Larry Sanders at the time. Gary Shandling really runs Larry Sanders. Paul Sims, though, was the head writer, and it's kind of a two-headed thing. Paul was going to stay for another season, and I was going to go there, work there. I was going to have that season to learn the show, to learn Gary, who was a genius, but a complicated and very complex guy. Kind of try to get inside his head, learn the rhythms of that show. I'd never worked on a single camera show before. I had never run a show before. But at that point, after Paul left, I was going to run it. That's what I was told. So I was being offered, it's just bizarre. At that point, a guy who had never run a show, who had never worked on a single camera show, was saying, they were saying, come in, we're going to groom you for a year, and you're going to take over this incredible show. So again, being a guy who says, I can do that, I said, fine, let's do that. So I went into that, and as we're about to start, and I'm still working on Wings at the time. I had like a month or two left, but I had to start Larry said I was doing 2. Paul Sims quits. Before I start, he quits. They get in a big fight, and he's out. And they're like, okay, you're the guy. Wait, I don't know anybody here. I don't know the show as well as anybody here. I'm the guy. And really what that meant was, and I didn't realize it till much later, it meant you're the guy with the target on your head now. That's what that job was. You're going to be the punching bag. And I was too naive and too confident to know what I was walking into. I started, Wings ended. It was lovely. They were very gracious. I got a nice little send-off. I had done about 100 episodes of Wings. I started on Larry Sanders. At first it was a love fest. I was, Gary, I would hang out at Gary's house, learning Gary, I review the show, we're talking about ideas. Oh, Gary calls my agent, I love his ideas, it's all great, it's all good. And, to make a long, sad story short, I slowly felt like this is not going well. I didn't know the show as well. I didn't know the specifics of Gary. That's a very specific head, and it takes a while to really understand it. I feel like today I could go in and do that. Then I don't think I was anywhere near prepared for what I had to do. There were good experiences there. I mean, I wrote an episode with Gary that was bizarre. Life would imitate art would imitate life there. 1 minute you'd be talking about the show and about the craziness of the show, and the next minute you were like writing a scene from the show, and the next minute you realized you were talking about real life. And that would happen all the time. The mirror would turn around, and you didn't know what side of it you were on. I remember one time we had done a rewrite, and Gary wasn't happy with the rewrite. And Gary and the producer called me in, and he's like, "Look, I just don't like this rewrite." I go, "Why?" He goes, "It just feels like it doesn't feel real to me." I said, "Well, what doesn't feel real about it?" He said, like right here, for example. And the producer's kind of sitting behind him, annoyed. And he goes, "What doesn't feel real here?" And he goes, "Like right here, like these two characters, they say the same thing in unison, and that doesn't." And I go, "What's wrong with that?" And at the same time, he and the producer go, "That doesn't happen in real life." They both said it at the same time. I went, "Yeah, you're right." Like I had moments like that. But there were then there were incredible moments too. Like we wrote an episode about Larry needing to get his friend, Artie wants him to get his friend Warren Beatty to be on the show because they need guests for sweeps. In the meantime, Gary, in real life, had become friends with Warren Beatty. So I'm sitting at Gary's house and we're writing this episode and we're getting to the scene where he has to call Warren Beatty. I found out Gary hasn't even asked Warren Beatty if he'll do it. So Gary gets on the phone and is now calling Warren Beatty to ask him if he'll be in an episode in which Larry asks his friend Warren Beatty to be on the show. And I'm just sitting there like trying to take notes, and as Gary's asking him, and those kind of moments happened all the time. But anyway, there was one night where the model Vendela was on the show, and she was doing a set piece where they were on the talk show, and she decided on her own in a take that as she storms off the set, she's supposed to storm off the set, that she's gonna dump her cup of coffee or water, whatever it was, on the desk as she walked up. She just decided to do it. And Gary, she did it, and it kind of a little bit got on Gary, and he got this look on his face, and he just looked around, and he's like, why did that happen? Why did that happen? And I could just tell there was something. I go, and he walked off, and he needed to go cool off in his trailer for a while. And I turned to this Maya Forbes, who was a writer on the show at the time, and I said, mark my words, I'm going to get blamed for that. And she said, shut up. You are so crazy. Shut up. There's no way you're going to get blamed for that. Next morning, I get a call. Why don't you come into the office? We're going to talk on Monday, from Brad Gray. And the meeting on Monday morning was basically, you're not fired, but it's been my experience that when Gary loses confidence in someone, he's not going to get it back. So it might be best if you think about something else you could do now, because I just had signed this big overall deal with them. And Brad was nervous and I'd never seen him like that. I came home and I was really bummed, but I couldn't believe the weight that was off my shoulders. It was ridiculous. Like, I was carrying around, it took me a long time to kind of recover from, because I was doing my best to get into Gary's head, and that is that's a cold, that is a dark, mysterious place with a lot of hidden corridors, and I remember once saying to my friend of mine, I was with this friend who's not in the business, and we were doing something on Saturday afternoon, and he says something, and I go, oh, you must hate me right now. He's like, no, why would I hate you? And I realized this was like I was being Gary. I was trying so hard to get into his psyche that it was screwing me up a little bit. Anyway, my agent, Jay Suris, said to me, so what do you want to do now? I said, I don't know. I'm embarrassed about this. I'd never been, while I wasn't technically fired, I think that was just semantics. And he said, what if I can get your job back on Frasier? I said, I'd be embarrassed to ask. I chose the other ones. I'd feel silly. He goes, let me make a call. And he called, because I had my deal with Roasting Gray. So he called Chris Lloyd and asked, and Chris said, yeah, we'd love to have him. He cleared it with the guys, who were, again, gracious. They got me, I was still on an overall deal with Roasting Gray. I said to Roasting Gray, like, whatever, so just pay, to the Frasier people, pay what you have, and you'll get me. Whatever you can afford, So it was like a low to mid-level salary, and because I was still getting paid by Brillston Gray, the money was going to go to Brillston Gray, And I said to Brillstein Gray, you owe me this. Like, I'm doing this. And I'll develop a show while I'm working on this, but it can only help me to be on the show and take it, and you owe me. So I returned to Frasier. I think I may have done 4 days a week, I'm not exactly sure. And then wrote a couple scripts and started developing Just Shoot Me.
What's the most important thing you learned from working on Frasier?
Don't talk down to the audience. Make them reach. They will. You can't outsmart the audience. You won't be too smart for the audience. The thing that the audience, the more credit you give an audience, the smarter they become. In a nutshell. And, by the way, get into business with great actors who are brilliantly funny, and they will save you. You'll write brilliant scripts, hopefully most of the time, but occasionally you won't, and they'll make them seem brilliant. So that's what I took.
What about working with Kelsey Grammer himself?
Kelsey is a genius. Like, at that form, he's a genius. He's, a very gracious guy to work with. He's tough, but he's fair. He doesn't like a lot of bullshit. There's been a lot of different Kelseys that I've witnessed through the years. I don't know. I don't know. He's a guy he's just. There were little moments that would blow my mind. Kelsey was a guy who would not. He would kind of like, blah blah blah. He all week would be marking the scene, just kind of marking it, and he didn't really quite know. There'd be little flashes of brilliance, but he would be kind of all over with the lines and the words and everything. And then right before a scene, he walks up to the script supervisor's stand. He looks at the scene. He looks at the scene. He goes, "Okay, let's do this." He goes out and he's letter perfect. And it's brilliant. And you just come to trust that. And his instincts are brilliant, and it's just a rare thing. So I feel honored to have witnessed somebody who was, among the best people to have ever done that.
Yeah. And you said while you were working on Frasier, you were developing another show.
Yeah. So as part of my deal with Brillstein Gray, I'll develop a show for you. Again, the tricky part there is I had never written an original thing in my life. I never wrote, the things I wrote in high school were all, like a Saturday Night Live. We did a Saturday Night Live assembly, and we would do bits that were Weekend Update and things. That wasn't my idea. I never created characters. Short stories I had, but not in this. Never. So what I've come to learn in this business is you don't know if someone can do that. They could be very good at staffing a show, and they might not just have the whatever it is that you need to create a show. So that was a bit nerve-wracking. While at Larry Sanders, I had an idea for an episode. And the episode was, because that season was about, a lot of that season was about Larry dating. And so I said, well, it'd be an interesting episode is if Larry is dating a supermodel. She comes to the show, they're gonna go out to dinner right after the show. Larry gets called into some emergency meeting with Artie. Network, terrible, we need you to come in and meet with them. He says to this supermodel, I gotta go into this meeting. He says to Janine Garofalo's character, who was this, the cast or the booking person, and he was kind of tough and tattooed and angry. Keep her company. And to me, that was the episode. Her forced into a room with a supermodel and needing to be polite to her and trying to keep the facade up. And at some point, there's a meltdown of some sort. Words are exchanged, something happens, and then somehow it's repaired. And I thought that was a really interesting idea that what does beauty do? The effect of beautiful people on those around them and what it does to them. I just thought that was fascinating. That I read an article that at a modeling, or I have a friend who worked at a modeling agency, and I noticed that all the women who worked as bookers at this modeling agency, I don't mean to sound mean, but they weren't attractive. They were some of them were overweight, some of them were and I wondered, what does it do to them? Lovely people, funny, interesting, probably more interesting but what's it like for those people to be in a business that is about nothing other than the perfect female physical form, and then to have to go home and look yourself in the mirror? And what does that do to your self-confidence and your take on the world? How does it make you bitter and all that? And so I started to be interested in that. Then I read a story about this guy bought his daughter the Wilhelmina modeling agency. Here, I'm gonna buy you a little gift. Here's a business. Here's an existing major business. Run it. And I put those all together. I also became interested in that idea of older men who remarry and then have kids. So I put those elements together, and I went out and pitched that show at a modeling agency, and about a father and daughter in a really contentious relationship, and the father is married. The daughter's a classmate from high school who the daughter never liked, having a baby that she doesn't know about because they're estranged, blah, blah, blah. And there's my show. Went out and pitched it, sold it in the room at NBC, because I had this relationship with NBC. Warren Littlefield, and Jamie Tarsis was there. Bernie Brillstein, I remember, was in the pitch. And we love it, we want it. Great. Okay, great. Then there's that, now you got to do it moment. And while I was doing Frasier, which now became 4 days a week, I think I was full-time until this point. Okay, I'm going to write this pilot on the side, and da-da-da. And I start writing it, and it's hard. It was hard. It was not quite coming together, but, I was wrestling it to the ground. I put in an enormous amount of time on it. And I had a couple of my daughter, I have 3 kids, 19, 17, 14. I think my 2 daughters had both been born at this point, I think. Certainly the oldest one had. And I remember she came into my office at home one day on a weekend, and go, Daddy, come, watch me swing. And I'm like, honey, I want to, but I got to work on this right now. Returning to the scene of the father who had neglected his daughter, growing up. But this was my moment, That's what I felt like. This is my chance. This is it. Okay, in my mind, if I blow this, I'll never get another chance. So I turn it in. They go, it's good. We like it. We kind of have some notes. They give me some notes. 20% needs to be fixed. And there was something gnawing at me. Something wasn't right. I'm like, this isn't right. This isn't right. This can't, it's not, they weren't excited. Something's wrong. And then I was pulling out my hair. Now, by the way, before that point, before I turned it into NBC, I skipped this step. There were a couple of days I'm like, this isn't working. This isn't working, honey. And And if I had done it on spec, I would have quit. I would have absolutely stopped. It was so painful, sitting up till 3 a.m, pulling my hair out, trying to get this done. But I owed a script. They bought it. I had to deliver. I had to keep going. Anyway, jump forward. It dawned on me one day that I cannot have a show about this strong female lead coming in to take over her father's modeling agency. What can she hope to change? She's got to sell out from the minute she walks in that door. Because what are you going to do? Say, I'm going to start promoting models who aren't so good looking? Or it doesn't make sense. It's not real. There's nothing to fight about. That's the job. You took the job, stop complaining, do the job. It didn't make sense. I'm like, this is a flawed premise. That was a painful realization. And then it hit me, make it a magazine, then she can change it. You can still have all the characters. It's still in a world of beauty and fashion and everything, but no, I want to write stories that are about this, and I want to do that, and suddenly the world opens up. And it meant throwing out about 80% of the script and starting over. And without telling anybody, I did. The big breakthrough for me was the last scene in that pilot where she told her father, who confessed that he was scared about this new baby, because I was always so worried that it's unpleasant to watch adults complain, you were this to me, you were that to me. It's like, let's move past it. So the breakthrough for that scene was when she told her father, he said, I don't know if I can, do it. I don't know if I'm going to blow it. And basically she said, well, then don't. Don't be that guy. Basically everything that she felt, for herself, she said, be there for her, do this for her, don't let her, and when she tries to push you away, don't let her. It's not what she really wants. And, it's like that moment, like to me was the key, like of the series. Like it was there's something here that I like. So they liked it and off we went.
Did you have anybody in mind for the cast?
I wrote it with Janine Garofalo in mind because the idea came from her. Came from an idea for her, for Larry Sanders. But she was kind of in a different mode at that point. In the too cool for school, sitcom mode, network, multicam sitcom.
And how did Laura San Giacomo get into the picture?
It was just, once you start that process, names start coming up. And she was the right amount of tough. I needed a girl who was tough, but yet still sexy in some way. She could be strong, but she can't just be, there had to be some vulnerability and some, something about her, a softer side that she can access as well.
Now, David Spade wasn't in the pilot, was he?
No. And that was really a big key, obviously. We shot the original pilot, got picked up for 7 or something, and there was a little part of just a tiny little part of Jack's assistant who was just kind of a gatekeeper. And one day Brad Gray called me and said, we were in pre-production, we were writing, and he said, what do you think about adding David Spade to the show? And David Spade was a client of theirs, and I went, love him, funny. And so he goes, I'll have him come in for a meeting. And it began a series of about 3 meetings that I felt were going nowhere. I didn't know that David was hypoglycemic. So all of a sudden we'd be talking, and he'd be talking, he goes, okay, I gotta go. And he'd get up and leave. didn't realize he was kind of getting up to go get a banana someplace or whatever, but because he was crashing. But for him, he was scared. He had some movie success with oh crap, the one with Chris Farley. Help me out. No, before Black Sheep. Tommy Boy. Yeah, Black Sheep was the other side of that. And he had come off Saturday Night Live, and he didn't want to blow it. You make one bad move, and you're gonna slide down. So it took a while to convince him to come on board, but we did. And it's funny. He wanted to play somebody with, I'll be the guy who, like all these highfalutin positions at the magazine. I'm like, no, it's funnier. See, if you're the assistant, then you're the underdog, and and it's funny that you get to be you. If you have actual power, it's not as funny. And he goes, but I kind of felt like he just wanted a powerful job. I go, no, but the more powerful job your fake job is, the less powerful your real job is. Anyway, he came to see the light, and after, initial few episodes of being scared, he became, really on board and great.
How was it running your own show?
It was scary, but I must say, it was scary. There were really some horrific moments of what do I do now, and that inevitable moment of the first, you make a pilot, things happen, whatever, and then now you've assembled a staff. That's a whole thing, and you're sitting there around a conference table, and then you hit your first lull of like, what do we do now? And you're like, oh no, this is not conceived well. This is not a show. Oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. Like that moment hits you, and you cannot believe that you'll ever be able to get, we ended up getting 148 episodes. You can't believe you'll ever get 3 at that point. So there are very scary moments like that. But I will say that being a type A person, being a person with maybe more confidence than I should be allowed to have, and I enjoyed the position. I enjoyed it.
How was it dealing with NBC?
All over the place. They were not supportive at first. We barely squeaked on the air. They didn't promote us. It had been a week and a half before we were set to premiere. It was mid-season. You couldn't walk outside in LA and not see a billboard or bus sign or for the new Arsenio Hall sitcom, and promos everywhere for it, and nothing for us, nothing. And we were premiering in a week and a half. I'd call it, what are we doing? Yeah, we're gonna get to it. Basically, what I learned is they just didn't have any faith. So some things squeaked on, some promos and whatever, and then the night, our big premiere night, and much to everyone's shock, the next morning, we beat Arsenio out of nowhere. We beat him. And suddenly I remember, because I had done a little interim job, and I was driving to that job, and I remember exactly where I was. I was on the 405 right by Mulholland. Phone rings. Steve, I have Warren Littlefield for you. And I'm like, okay. And I just remember, Steve! Like, it was a whole different guy. And I give him shit about that to this day, and he owns it. To their credit, they smelled blood, and they went for it. They went, okay, now you're getting promo, and now we're going because we think we could beat them. But until that point, they had no faith.
Do you have a favorite episode?
Just Shoot Me?
Mm-hmm.
I have a few. I love the pilot for obvious reasons. It's. I love Slow Donnie.
Did you get any flack for that?
No.
Could you do it today?
Yeah, because it was about, I think so. I mean, we weren't condoning his behavior. Our characters thought it was reprehensible. But it was a great moment because when we were pitching that story, the idea of his brother had come up and there were some ideas around, and at some point, I don't know how it came into my head, but I said about Elliot's brother, and I said, what if he's pretending to be retarded? And everyone just laughed, and they're like, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I went, yeah, you're right. It's too out there. And then we started talking some more, and I kept going, no, I think you could. Because da-da-da-da. And then we, of course, went forward with it. And then we came to shoot night, and it had to be David Cross. We said, if we can't get David Cross, we're not doing it. Shoot night, the character comes out, and he's acting as if he were mentally retarded. And you could tell the audience was getting uncomfortable. They're like, this is not right to be making fun of a mentally retarded character. And you can feel the tension growing. And there was a big, like 2 or 3 scene setup. And then the moment came when he revealed to Maya that it's just an act. I just do this because they wait on me hand and foot. I don't have to work. It's fantastic. I've never heard such a roar. It went on for about 3 minutes. I mean, the relief, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was a really fun moment. So that was great. I particularly liked the Woody Allen episode we did because I thought it was sort of just out there. We did one about a murder mystery dinner party that I thought was really funny, just funny. In fact, at the same time, which was kind of interesting, because they were all still my friends and I socialized with them all the time, Frasier had just broken, it turns out, a murder mystery dinner party, and David Lloyd, who was the king of farcical, everything that can go wrong will go wrong episodes, wrote it or whatever. And David loved Just Shoot Me. And he said to me at a party, I liked your episode better. Because I thought that was just brilliant. And I was very proud of that because he was, he was the man. So that was great. And I really loved the finale that nobody saw. I think it's unbelievably sweet and poignant.
Did you know that's how you were going to end it when you started it?
Not when I started it, but I always had an idea that it made sense for him to turn over, the magazine to his daughter. That seemed like a great step. And that was a tough week. Because when I wrote it, I felt bad. Because of the turn of events and some things that happened business-wise behind the scenes, I left full-time running of Just Shoot Me after 2.5 years. And I don't have very many regrets in this business, but that's the big one. I shouldn't have done that. I left too soon. I stayed in an advisory capacity. I was there for all the table reads and whatever, but it's not the same. The guys who took over were great. They did a wonderful job. It's just there's something that changes. It just has to be because we're human beings and every little decision affects the tone, and my approach would just be slightly different. And it doesn't mean it's better or worse, but it was different. And I think the actors, while we all remained very friendly, I think that they felt that I had abandoned them a little bit. And I regret it. I don't think it was the right move. But so when I wrote the finale, which I just said, to the staff, I'm going to write it. Like, don't even worry about the breaking of the story. I just have this idea. It was very cathartic for me because I felt like I was saying, because there was a series of goodbyes that Jack was saying to everybody, and I thought, that I was expressing my feelings.
So you were working on other things during that time as well, Stark Raving Mad.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was a sort of like this, I signed a deal to come over to 20th Century Fox TV. And I did that because the people at Burleston Gray at the time, and Brad, unfortunately, was out of the country when all this happened, and I think we all kind of underestimated what it meant. But they decided, they knew how much I wanted to stay and be a part of Just Shoot Me, and they decided to try to use that against me in a negotiation. And I got angry at that, and I finally, and they were low, and I got this, sort of life-changing offer to come here and develop shows. And I said to the person who was the head of that negotiation, who was lowballing me, I called him up personally, and I said, okay, I'm just gonna I want to cut right to the chase here. You're not offering me anywhere near what other people are offering me. Are you doing that because you can't or because you don't have to? And he said, because we don't have to. And I said, goodbye. And I left. And it was just a matter of principle to me. I didn't like it. Don't punish somebody because they care. So I ended up, punishing the wrong people, including myself. But started a wonderful long-term relationship with this studio.
And that's where Stark Raving Mad came?
Yeah, I mean, a series of, one season and out shows. Stark Raving Mad was, it came from an idea, to tell you the truth, kind of loosely based on Kelsey. I don't know if I've ever said that publicly before, but I was fascinated with people who were so talented that if not for their talent, they could be in real trouble. And this was during a time when Kelsey was having some, trouble with drugs and alcohol and things. And here's a guy who was so unbelievably talented that there was a safety net of people around him that were like, we're going to save you. And it's worth it to us to do whatever we have to do to keep you healthy and functional because you're so amazing at what you do. That fascinated me. So that was the starting point for Stark Raving Mad. A quirky author who was weird and bizarre and OCD and all this, but who had written this gigantic bestseller, and it was in the book company's best interest to keep him moving forward and functional. So they assign this hapless editor the job of wrangling this eccentric guy. I liked it. We did some things right. We did some things wrong. I thought the stories we told were really good. I'm proud of the storytelling. There were some couple characters that were underdeveloped and weren't thought out well enough, and so weren't, adding what they could. I've learned some things since then. But ultimately at the end of the day, boy, I'd love to have the ratings we had on that show. It was incredible. Like now, it would be the number one show on TV. But we got picked up by one regime. A new regime came in right before we were going to shoot the pilot. The person, part of the new regime said, listen, I know you're about to shoot this pilot, but I'd like you to recast Tony Shalhoub. And I'm like, why? And he said, because I don't think he's the lead of a show. And I said, well, listen, okay, Tony's a friend of mine. I made a commitment to him. He had a lot of offers, and he chose me. I'm sticking with him. That's it. He's my choice. And I think that person never just got on board, and subsequently canceled the show at the end of that season. If someone were to go back and look at the numbers, they would be quite amazed that show got canceled. And we won like a People's Choice Award for Best New Comedy or something, and then we're canceled. That was tough. I mean, it's part of the NBC being tough years. I mean, I think Just Shoot Me had been in 13 or 14 time periods in 7 years. It's very hard for an audience to follow a show that's moving around like that. They lose track. We debuted the final season. We debuted where TiVo said we were not even there. They switched it at the last minute and then blamed us for not. The people in the Modern Family chat room, who back then there weren't a lot of chat rooms, these were the most crazy fans for the show, couldn't find the show.
You're talking about Just Shoot Me.
Yeah, Just Shoot Me. So, forgive me, I'm jumping around, but that's how frustrating that was. And then this was just another frustrating development in my relationship with NBC.
You did Stacked for Fox.
Yes, I did.
Don't like talking about it?
No, I'll talk about it. I did some other things before that, didn't I? Like Greg the Bunny.
Greg the Bunny, yeah, we're for time.
Oh, okay.
But if you want to.
Well, no, I mean, Greg the Bunny was an interesting, very quickly, Greg the Bunny was a really interesting concept. I loved it from the beginning. I now look back on that with, we overproduced the hell out of that show. We tried to do too much. We should have kept it small. Those little puppets couldn't withstand the weight of a gigantic show. Had it been smaller, I think in season 2 we had it figured out. We would have done it very differently, and it just didn't quite have its chance to grow. Stacked was it's really one of those weird things that happens to you in life. I worked on a few other things, Oliver Bean and a couple other things, and one day I was trying to figure out what I was going to do now, and my agent called me and said, hey, Pamela Anderson's looking to do a show, comedy. She's been saying no to everybody. You want to meet her? And I said, yeah, because I just want to call my college friends and say, hey, you want to have breakfast with her? I go, yeah, it's because I want to call my college friends and go, guess who I just had breakfast with? It was really my main purpose, because he said she's saying no to everything. So I go, great, it'll be a fun story. I'll meet her. I get to call my friends. Perfect. He says, do you have an idea for her? And I go, okay, she's like this girl who, and I pitch out the idea for Stacked on that phone call. I just go, bam. And he goes, okay, I'll set up the breakfast. And so I meet her for breakfast. And because I don't particularly want to do it, I don't think it's real, I sit down with her and I say, listen, if I were you, you're going about this all wrong. You've been doing this. You got to start redefining yourself. If you want to grow, you got to start growing as an actress, and you got to start playing a real character. I mean, when I see you in real life, you know, because we're in Malibu and she's fresh-faced and she's cute and she's a mom and, you know, a fiercely protective mom and all that. That's a woman that I think America could fall in love with. And then the phone rings through and it's my agent and goes, she's in. She wants to do it. I'm like, what? She wants to do it. Because I had that attitude. I had to go to a meeting. I'm in somewhere else. I got a call. Fox will give you 13 on the air. They want it by this date. What? 13 on the air. And before I know it, like it just sort of started this thing. And I talked myself into it being a good idea. I said, well, I'm gonna approach it. It's gonna be a classic sitcom with a little bit of a charge because Pam's in it, and I'm gonna do my best to make her a real actress. Pam is a lovely person. She's generous and nice, and had a great attitude about coming to the stage and working hard and all that. There was a lot of, I underestimated both people's apprehension about her not being an actress and therefore maybe not wanting to be in a show. You know, the real people who I really wanted, who were really good, who were going to help carry her, not wanting to do it, and America's feelings about her. They were much more negative toward her than I realized. That came from like testing and things like that, that there were people who just said, I don't care what it is, I'm not watching a show with it, you know, that kind of stuff. She gave it her best, she worked hard, but she just couldn't let go of the Pam persona. And I think that looking back on it and knowing what I know now, if I were to do it again, I'd say, you know, I would make sure that that aspect of her having kids was in the show. Because, for example, I think that's working, you know, very well for Sofia Vergara right now. Not that I'm equating the two, you know, comparing or anything, but the fact that Sofia plays a fiercely protective mom and not a sex pot. Listen, you can't hide the fact that she's a sexy woman, so don't play it.
Did that idea when you were creating that character, did that come from your experience on Stacked? I mean, did you?
No, it came from we need a very funny, beautiful Latina to play this role. I mean, I think in the back of my mind, I knew that her being a fiercely protective mom was going to make people like her. Chris and I talked, we had two goals. She's a great mom and she's not a gold digger. She didn't marry Jay for his money. That's what we said going in. And then the rest is Sophia's charm and talent and, you know, the writer's doing great work.
Okay, we'll get to that on our next tape.